Well, I'd like to welcome you tonight to our candidates forum for the City of Westlake Village City Council election that we have upcoming. We're going to start off with a flag ceremony from Troop 485.
Troop salute. Those not in uniform, please place your right hand over your heart. Color guard advance. Color guard, prepare to coast the colors. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Color guard, post the colors. Color guard, salute. Two, you may be seated.
Well, as I said, I'd like to welcome you tonight to our candidates forum. My name is Neil Tickton. I'm the founder of Westlake Revelations and the moderator for tonight's debate. Westlake Revelations, Oak Forest, and the League of Women Voters have joined together to bring you this event. And a huge thanks to Adrian Georges and the residents of Oak Forest for hosting us. Before we start, I'd like to welcome up Sandra De Gennaro from the League of Women Voters to tell us a couple of words.
Hi. I am a member of the Las Virgenes unit of the League of Women Voters of Los Angeles, and this unit is composed of Westlake, Agora Hills, and Calabasas. The League was created by women who knew that there was more to voting than just getting the right to vote. And California got the right to vote women 100 years ago, and we were one of the first states to do that. But they wanted to help women understand, become more informed on the issues that were at stake. And so then the purpose of the League is to provide unbiased information and to educate the public and provide for citizen participation in governments in the political process. We are nonpartisan. We don't endorse candidates, but we provide candidate forums such as this tonight. We provide pros and cons on ballot measures, and when we do take a position on any issue, it's after research and study, and then we come to consensus with our membership. Membership in the League is open to men and women 18 and over, and I have information at the back of the room on membership and information about the League, and smartvoter.org. You can get a bookmark back there. So tonight we're going to have one of the things that we're most proud of is sponsoring candidate forums for your information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. For those of you that don't know, this month is the 5-year anniversary of when I started Westlake Revelations. With more than 300 articles in the archives, today about a quarter of the city reads the articles on a regular basis. I'm a big believer in events like this happening simply because the community comes together and makes it happen. And once again, that's what's happened here. Our local Boy Scout troop is helping me with setup and moderation as well as helping out overall. We have Michael Garrison here helping us with our video. Thank you, Michael. And an amazing number of questions were contributed by the community, all really taking part in the debate process. Our host, Oak Forest, and the League of Women Voters all did their part, and we appreciate that as well. And of course, one more helpful group, my family. Thank you very much for being tolerant of this little situation. Now on to the debate. A quick review of the rules, which the candidates have all agreed to. Each candidate has a 5-minute opening statement and a 1-minute closing statement. The candidates have chosen numbers out of a hat or out of a bag to determine the random order of which they are seated up here and which they will be speaking as well. We have a series of questions. I and the Scouts will be asking these on behalf of the community. They're based on questions that have been submitted by the community. We've worked hard to make sure that the questions are what the residents told us that they wanted to hear and represented what were submitted. A couple of days ago, we gave all the candidates a list of most of the topics that we're going to be asking about tonight. And for the speed round, we'd given them the specific questions that we're going to give them to make it a little easier for them. Time permitting, we'll take some additional questions from the audience if there are some, but we'll see if there's enough time. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer most of the questions except for the speed round, which is 30 seconds. And to maximize the candidate's time, some questions will have a little bit of an overview so that they don't have to keep repeating that and using that as part of their time allotment. The candidates have a monitor in front of them, which many of you can see up in front so that they know when they're running out of time. Remember that our 2 current council members may be limited on what they can say. You see, their job is not to decide on an issue until the facts are all in and it comes up for a vote. So they may not be able to say something like, "I will vote yes or no on something," and just understand that they may have that issue. Enough of the rules, except for one more thing. Each of these people are our neighbors. Essentially, this position, while elected and while there is a stipend, is essentially a volunteer position. So they each deserve our respect for running for office and for contributing in office, and we very much appreciate that. With that, our first candidate to speak is Chris Mann.
Good evening. I'd like to thank Oak Forest for being our host this evening, and the League of Women Voters, and Boy Scout Troop 485 for co-hosting. And a special thank you to Westlake Revelations and Neil Tickton for all your hard work putting this together and being our moderator tonight. As many of you may remember, I served on the City Council once before, from 1999 to 2003, the last year of that as mayor. I chose not to run for re-election in 2003 in order to pursue business opportunities, but my time on the council and as mayor was personally rewarding for me, and I believe it was a highly productive time for the city. I would venture to say even that it was, in the history of the council, it was one of the times where the council worked most cohesively together. As a result, we were able to accomplish much for the residents of Westlake. A few examples of that are the development of the Foxfield Park, approval of the Four Seasons Hotel, creation of the city's volunteers and policing program, the protection of open space, such as Lot 79, streetscape improvements, such as the entry features to the city at the intersection of Lindero Canyon and Agora Roads, and the building of emergency fiscal reserves to the highest levels in city history to that point. Since I left the council, I've been focused on business. I run a public relations company specializing in issues related to land use. I'm also a partner in a small commercial real estate company. Through these experiences in the business world, I feel that I've gained knowledge and insight that are directly applicable to the role of a city council member, and that I have a lot more to offer now than I did the first time I was on the council, which I'd like to think didn't go so badly. I'm running for city council again because I believe the next few years will be critical ones for the city of Westlake Village. Major land use decisions will be made, which could impact our quality of life. For example, the proposal to build up to 140 senior apartments on the former Westlake Hospital site, and the proposed big box commercial project on Russell Ranch Road. I plan to make Westlake Village my home for many years to come, and I want to preserve our small town feel and our high quality of life. I'd like to enhance recreational opportunities while protecting our remaining open space. I hope to protect our city from overdevelopment. I believe we should increase our support of our schools during these difficult times while reducing overall spending by setting the right economic priorities and eliminating unnecessary programs. I will push to increase city support for our existing local businesses and will fight to protect Westlake residents from higher taxes and fees. I think that we are truly blessed to live in Westlake Village. It's a beautiful community. It's conveniently located to just about anything we could want to do, populated with so many educated and talented and friendly and civic-minded residents. Crime here is low. We enjoy a high level of government services, and our city finances are at least not the disaster that so many other government agencies are dealing with. And yet we should never take any of this for granted, and there's always room for improvement. The city's budget is a prime example. We're lucky to not have the massive budgetary problems that so many other cities are experiencing. Still, city revenues have been steadily decreasing since 2007. Expenditures have continued to rise. When you look at a graph with the line representing revenues going down like this, and the line representing expenditures going up like this. We're very closely approaching the point at which those two lines cross each other, and then we'll be in real trouble. We can't let that happen. We need to encourage economic growth and tighten our belts until revenues are on the rise again. But with all that said, at the end of the day, Westlake is a wonderful community. I'm so happy to be here. I'm pretty much a local boy. I lived in this area for high school, went to Chaminade, and then to Cal Lutheran for college. Stayed in the area for my first real job after college as a probation officer with Ventura County Probation. I did move away for a time when I started my career in public relations, but I moved back the first opportunity I had, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. So I want to thank you again for having me tonight, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
It's that ONOFF button. Thank you, Chris. It's one of those technical things, it's kind of tough. Mrs. Klessig.
Thank you, Neil, and thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. I'm Philippa Klessig, your current council member and a former mayor of this beautiful city we call home. This has been an interesting 8 years that I've been on council. It's gone from the height of the income coming into the city to what I'll call the trough. Not the lowest, but pretty down there. And yet, through all of this, the council has worked extremely well together, council and staff, council, community, and businesses. I'm proud of the role I've had in making the city what it is today. And the results are tangible, things that you can actually see around you. Like the recently paved streets. How about the widening of the Lindero Canyon Exchange there down by the freeway? New landscaping, new playground equipment. Our park, our sports park, progressing. A new emergency notification service and extended library hours. No cutbacks in service. I think that's pretty incredible. Behind the scenes, how do we make this all happen? Balancing the budget, increasing our reserves, reducing fiscal debt, and paid off an unfunded pension liability, an obligation left behind by the previous council. How? How do we do this? Again, diversifying our income base. And I will say here that the Four Seasons was passed when I was on council. You guys started the ball rolling, but it was voted on in 2003, 2004. Besides diversifying the income base, more cooperation with our neighboring cities. We do joint street resurfacing. This has saved a lot of money for the city. And together we're looking into problems and solutions that affect our whole area. And looking at our goals. What do we want this whole wonderful Conejo Valley to be? We're talking about a possible regional art museum, a visitor center, schools, how to make them stronger. Clearly, the city of Westlake Village is doing more than just surviving. It's interesting when you approach an election. I have quite a collection of, I'll call it, election campaign material for local over the years. And I started flipping through those brochures. And they still have the same common theme over the past 20 years. And number one has always been city in the country, keeping the village in Westlake Village, this type of thing. We want our small community, which means planned and limited growth, safe neighborhoods, strong schools, strong economy. That is a given, and I dare say all three candidates here agree. And you're fortunate that you've got three strong candidates. But there is a difference. My commitment is, it is my way of life. I moved here 22 years ago and have been active ever since. I'm not a politician. I'm your friend and your neighbor. And it's your platform. It's not mine. People always say, what's your platform? What's your platform? It's not mine. It's what I've gathered from you over the years of walking around in the community, listening to what you're saying, and searching sometimes between the lines, trying to really hear what it is that you want. And in addition to that, I attend a lot of conferences and read everything I can get my hands on. Other cities have already tackled the same problems, and from them we can learn a lot. So what have I heard recently? And it kind of surprised me. Lighting. People want more lighting along our walking areas in the city. That seems to come out number one in the surveys lately. And it's not a safety issue as far as driving. Don't get me wrong, but if, this is a very outdoor-oriented community, and they like walking around the neighborhood, and we do need some more. The city has studied it. It's time to act. Trails linking our city, more support of the arts, finishing our sports park. More support of our businesses, and this is very important. We need to attract businesses that have quality job-generating business that enhance our enviable way of life. Possibly the internet. This is coming up on and off. It has been since I got on the council. Do we want free Wi-Fi? What can we do? In closing, why am I running? Why should you vote for Philippa Klessig? Because I care. Because you can see the results. Because my commitment and passion is the same today as it has been over the last 22 years. Focusing on the positive, getting the job done. People like you all here have made the difference in our community. So again, thank you for your caring concern. And as I like to say, there is no stopping all the good we can continue to do together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Klessig. Mr. Davis. Up a little bit.
Is it on here? I just do it a little differently, I guess. I'm Ned Davis, and I am your mayor currently. I've lived in Westlake Village for 18 years. I moved here with my two small children, and I had one born about 3 weeks after the earthquake in January of 98. No, 4. My brochures have a sort of a compilation of all the things that have happened since I got on council in 2008 when the residents voted me in, and I feel like it's been a great learning experience for me. The values that we moved here for are still the values that we have. I'm taking a little different approach to. I don't want to take credit for anything personally. Being on council is a team effort, and I think what separates a council that gets along and a council that doesn't is a council that is well matched in their sensibilities in terms of appreciating the process of the government as opposed to any one particular point of view on any particular issue. There are many different issues, and as a mayor, you get a chance to look at who you're working with, and you get to pick who goes on which committees. Our government works because these committees that we have review information on topics that are specific to what we're dealing with. City councils make policy. We are policy makers. The word politics has policy in it. And so what we're doing is we're discussing things that affect you. 2 areas in the city really affect you. One is the municipal code. These are the laws that we create for how we're going to relate to one another. And the other is zoning. And Chris and Philippa both talked about it. The zoning is what are we going to build, where are we going to build it, how is it going to go, how's it going to work. The communication required between each council member who brings a different sensibility. Each one of us has our own education, we have our own life experience, and we have our own judgments that we bring to the table, and we bring that in an open forum, very transparent most of the time when it can be, when we're not talking legal issues or things like that. And the citizenry can look and see how this is working. I would judge the last year in particular, since I picked the council committees and who's on which committee, by the way our votes turn out. The staff does the research, brings the information to the committee members. The committee members ask the questions in committee. The information is vetted. It comes to the city council, and then we have committee reports. Those committee reports are presented by the staff during the meeting, and then you hear us talk about it, check in with what the committee found out. If I'm not on that committee, I'll ask the people who are on the committee what that information is. And then what we do is we vote on it. And that's what you see on those Wednesday nights when we're voting. The votes that go 5-0 are a testimony to the hard work that the staff has done and the way that the council members have worked together. Leadership is putting the right council people together on the right committees to come up with the vetted, correct ways in which we're going to set policy. That's how it works. Personality makes a difference. You work with people you don't care for. You work with people you love to work with. And you know how it is. It's going to be the same way on city council. And all of our views are different. And I can tell you that in the committee meetings, we're not always in agreement. But we get to the point through the facts, through the vetting of information, and asking staff, who is extremely competent in this city, how to put that together. So when you think about who you're going to vote for, you need to think about the sensibilities they come with, what their background is, what their community involvement has been to give them the kind of experiences that you have had and can relate to in this community. And so it matters how that judgment is perceived and then how that judgment is executed. And I think if you look at the council in the last 4 years that I've been on it, I think it's worked extremely well. And I appreciate the time that you have given me tonight. Appreciate the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this, along with Neil and Revelations, the Boy Scouts, and the HOA for sure. I really have enjoyed coming down here, and when I walk through here, I just find this to be the most magical place in Westlake Village that most people don't get down to. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. So our first regular question is going to be for Mrs. Klessig, because you're the next one up. We're going to rotate the starts of each one of these questions. And our first question is going to be about bicyclists, and Johnny's going to ask this.
Okay, so the community has an extensive bike lane system, and it's clear from looking around on any weekend that a number of people use it. Even with a dedicated system, there have been accidents and sometimes even fatalities in vehicle versus bicyclist incidents in the community. Do you see ways to improve bicycle safety within Westlake Village? Do you see ways to work with neighboring city councils to expand the system that the city of Westlake Village currently enjoys?
Yes, the simple answer to the question. There's always room for improvement, and I think we're working on it right now. One of the things I brought up was a lighting that would be for pedestrians and bicyclists. Another thing we need to spend a little more time on is education of both our drivers and our bicyclists, and step back a moment and realize we all want to get to the same spot and we can share the road. Cities like Lincoln, California have done a lot on this. They've actually coordinated bicyclists, pedestrians, and electric cars now by setting up different times of day for electric cars, which are generally the older population, to run, and separating them from the bicycles. So there is more we can do in so many aspects.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
I had a discussion Saturday night with one of the Three Springs residents who's an avid bicyclist, and I asked him this very question. And one of the things that he expressed as frustration was that bicyclists share the same roadway that the joggers and the walkers do. We don't have sidewalks here for joggers and walkers. And we need to do that. We need to figure out ways in which to get the walkers off the street. Walkers walk against traffic. And when I drive around Westlake, I see walkers walking with traffic. One of the most dangerous things you can do is not see what's coming up on you. Bicyclists are vehicles, and they move in the same direction as a car. Two things, I think: education, awareness. That's really, really important. I also think a separation between the bicyclists and the walkers, which now puts the bicyclists closer to the curb, in theory. And so that's what I would do.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mann.
You know, I agree with establishing a better trail system for biking. But I think also, one of the things that I really enjoy about campaigning is the opportunity to walk through neighborhoods and talk to people. And you find that a lot of areas have neighborhood-specific issues. 2 weekends ago, I was walking in Westlake Canyon Oaks, and I got to talking to the president of their HOA, and this issue came up, and his take on it was that it's also an issue of enforcing traffic laws. This gentleman works from home, and he says he very, very seldomly sees a patrol car in Westlake, Canyon Oaks, and he's called the sheriff's department and isn't getting the kind of reaction he's hoping for. My experience with the sheriff's department has been very positive in this city, but I think proper enforcement of traffic laws could help this situation.
Okay, our next question, thank you very much. Our next question is going to start with Mr. Davis. And Zach Johnson is going to ask a question about community involvement.
Our community is known as one of involvement, with unbelievable numbers of residents helping in so many areas. Could each of you describe what you've been doing for the community over the past few years and what your future plans are?
For me, I have a charity that I'm very, very involved with. That I think directly relates to life in Westlake Village and even the quality of our neighborhoods and the value of your home. And that is, I've been associated with the Las Virgenes Educational Foundation since 2006. Since that time, this was a foundation that kept starting and stopping and starting and stopping. It started originally as the Las Virgenes Technological Foundation, which was basically set up to put technology into classrooms back when we were talking about 286 computers and wires that were small and couldn't carry much. But the internet was coming. This Las Virgenes Educational Foundation is the group that for the parents in the room, know that this is the group that you write your check to provide summer school for your children to either accelerate so they can take more elective classes in the regular school year, or to repeat a class if they've had a challenge on the class they've had. Since that time, I've spent a great deal of time on... Are we done?
Yeah, we're done.
Oh, sorry.
Jordan was trying to help you there by clearing the counter a little bit early. Mr. Mann.
Oh, community involvement. Well, I got off to an early start as a Cub Scout, actually, and later actually served on the board of directors of the Ventura County Council of the Boy Scouts of America a few years ago. I've been a member of the board of directors of the Community Leaders Association at California Lutheran University, member of the Knights of Columbus, very active member of the Chamber of Commerce. I've served as a member of the board of directors of a water board, and of course, my time serving on the city council and as mayor, which I hope to have the opportunity to do again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mann. Mrs. Klessig?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I've lived here for 22 years, and I don't think you want to hear the whole active 22 years. So I'll limit myself to the stuff I'm still doing even while I'm on council, because council does take up a lot of time. But this community is my home, and I'm vitally concerned with the way it progresses. So in addition to council, I'm on a couple statewide committees, have been over the 8 years. One is the Community Service Committee, which meets in Sacramento and other areas. I was on our water board. It was called the North Santa Monica Bay Water Task Force when we were looking at what to do, how to keep water clean as it drained to the Pacific. In addition, I've served and helped out, I should say, at Senior Concerns, Mary Health of the Sick, and now with the New West Symphony, and recently a founding member on the Regional Art Museum Board. I really would like to see an art museum come to our wonderful valley. So my objective is to stay active as long as I live here.
Thank you, Mrs. Klessig. This next question is going to start with Mr. Mann, and is about lighting. Clearly, the night sky has a great deal more light pollution than it did 10 to 15 years ago. This is partly within the city of Westlake Village and partly from neighboring areas. Often, increased lighting means increased safety, but on the flip side, lower levels of light can give an area a feel that many residents like. What are your thoughts about Westlake Village's current lighting? Do we need more or less, and where? And are there new ways to think about lighting than the way that we've been doing it?
I think it's 4 years, the city conducts a community survey, and this issue came up surprisingly as one of the top issues of residents is lighting. I think we need to be careful, though, because one of the nice things about living in a community like this is the ability to enjoy the night sky. And so while safety needs to be priority, I think we also have to prioritize our night sky, and we don't want to overdo it with lighting. I'm sure there are areas that could be improved when it comes to lighting, but I think, our streets are fairly safe overall. There are incidents, but I just want to make sure we don't go overboard with putting too much lighting.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. Mrs. Klessig?
Thank you, and I agree. We don't want to go overboard, and night sky is wonderful. My husband and I have a telescope. However, we do have some dark holes here. One is right along Agora Road by the golf course, and yet we have a lot of walkers there at night. Another, believe it or not, is in front of Calvary Community Church and Oaks Christian School. They don't even have full standard street lights. Street lights have amazingly improved over the past few years. They reflect much more down. You can control the amount of glare that goes up. I think what we need are more this low, like I said, pedestrian lighting that would reflect down on the ground so you can easily see where you're going, and if anybody's driving, they can see you. And I think that would benefit all of us and keep our night sky.
Thank you, Mrs. Klessig. Mr. Davis?
There's not a lot to add except that technology is playing a greater role in the ability to increase more light in places that you need it without bleeding over into the areas that you don't. So where people walk, we need sidewalks, and where sidewalks are, we need light so we don't trip. And as Chris said, our crime rate here is quite low. So when I think about safety at this point in our city, I'm thinking more about safety of walking and being seen, as opposed to criminals jumping out of bushes and things like that. That's just not what we have. So it needs to be thoughtful. But we also need to understand there are some basic elements to this that are regulated by how much light you have to have in the places you have to have it for safety that is already through our street safety and things like that.
Okay, thank you very much. This next question is going to start with Mrs. Klessig. It's about Lot C. When it comes to a parcel of land like Lot C, there's a lot of mixed feelings. For our audience, Lot C is the designation for the site on Russell Ranch Road that has been considered for a Lowe's shopping center as well as a large Opus office development. On one hand, developers have rights and the city cannot tell them what to do. Only they can make sure that a developer lives within the rules and the boundaries of the zoning. Some people like stores like Target, while others like office space, and still others would like to have other types of developments that may or may not be financially viable. To make matters more confusing, not all traffic patterns are the same. For example, office buildings have less car trips, but they concentrate them during rush hours and create rush hours. And retail has more car trips, but is more spread throughout the day. With all of that in mind, what was your position on Lowe's, and what thoughts can you share about the future of Lot C?
Thank you, Neil. Boy, that was a long question. I was for Lowe's. I was for that retail development for several reasons. The diversity that it would bring in what our choices were as shoppers here and the income that it would bring to the city. That was turned down. We've looked at office. That didn't work. But I want to make sure the community realizes it's not your council that comes up with these ideas. We can only act on what is brought to us by the developers and the people who own the land. So now we've rotated through and we're looking back at retail. Retail definitely has its benefits, but we have to be sensitive to the people that live in Renaissance, to the offices nearby, and again to that overriding concern of keeping our small community. I hope we can come up with a solution, and I'd like to see mixed. A little retail, a little office, even a little residential, I think would be wonderful.
Thank you, Mrs. Klessig. Mr. Davis.
Lived here 18 years, and that lot has looked the same for 18 years. All of the discussion, all of the trauma that I feel like we've gone through on this, there is an economic problem there. There is only one way in, and there's only one way out. And it all runs through Russell Ranch Road and Lindero Canyon Road, and that intersection won't be good no matter what you do. So the choice between Lowe's and an office building, I chose Lowe's for two reasons. One, it was more what I would use in that space, because I wasn't going to rent an office. Two, the income to the city from a retail outlet like a Lowe's is significant, especially in a down economy when do-it-yourselfers want to do what they want to be working on things. But so the choice for us was between offices or retail. And the biggest factor in all of that is the traffic.
And Mr. Mann. And for all the candidates, probably the best ways, and I'm doing the same thing with the microphone, is down just a little bit below, right at the chin.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
Thank you. I was not on the council at the time, but I did support the Lowe's project for the same reasons that Mayor Davis stated. I think that retail is a much better use for that property than as office for reasons of traffic, financial benefit to the city, and the convenience that it brings to the current residents to have places to shop and dine. However, in 2006, residents spoke pretty clearly on Measure Z. Measure Z was voted down, not by a slim margin, and I think we have to ask ourselves why that is. Were residents voting against any type of big box use on that site, or was it a vote specifically against Lowe's? And I think the council needs to try to understand that before it makes another decision on a big box use. Also, I think that we need to consider the residents who are most directly affected. When the residents in that area bought, they did so under the impression that what was developed on that property would be office. If we're going to change that, it's very important that we get buy-in from the residents closest to that area.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. And thank you to all the candidates for living within the time limits. You guys are doing a great job. Keep it up. Don't make me the ogre.
It's that clock that we're.
I know, the clock is like right there. That's the whole idea. This next question is going to start with Mr. Davis, and it is about the old Westlake Hospital assisted living facility proposal that may be coming before us here. The old Westlake Hospital property is an L-shaped 6.5-acre parcel. Unlike other properties like Lot C, this property's public institutional zoning gives the city a great deal more influence over what is developed here. Do you believe that an assisted living facility can be made to satisfy the requirements for public institutional zoning? Do you believe that most residents would benefit from an assisted living facility? Do you believe that a different type of use may better meet the requirements for public institutional? And do you believe that organizations such as Westminster Presbyterian Church can help this property satisfy the zoning requirements? So there's several pieces in there, and just lay out what your thoughts are on each one.
Let me take the last one first, because it's the only one I feel I can be honest and answer with, because I can't answer any of the other questions as an incumbent.
So do what you can to lay out your thoughts about public institutional zoning and limit it to that if you feel that that's a good way to go.
Okay? I'll still take the third part of it first. That's fine. Westminster Church is going to be there, has been there for years, and is going to continue to be there, and it's going to be the neighbor to this property no matter what happens there. And so, yes, you have to take into great consideration how a new neighbor will impact them. They had a neighbor as a hospital, and now they have a neighbor as a vacant piece of property. The economics of that property make it extremely difficult in a public institutional zoning to make a profit and to have some sort of public benefit. I don't know what that is yet. Haven't seen it. The proposal from the Sunrise that came in was defeated on I think a 4-1 or a 5-0 vote, 4-1 vote. It was proposed to be 276,000 square feet, which is, if you take Costco and you add another 100,000 square feet, that's how big it was going to be. And 6 acres makes that look very small. You have a traffic problem? It is the center of the city. Lot C is not the center of the city. So, sorry, it's red.
It's a tough one to do in a minute. Mr. Mann.
Yeah, I do have a problem with adding so much residential in the center of our city. When the current owners of that property purchased it, they did so knowing what the zoning was. I think that there is not sufficient public benefit to rezoning it residential. Residential doesn't bring sales tax revenue to the city. It doesn't provide recreational benefit to current residents or any benefit to current residents. It only puts more pressure to provide public services. at a time when the city doesn't need that pressure. So I would not be in favor of changing the zoning to allow for residential at that location.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. Mrs. Klessig.
Slightly different take on it, and agreeing that, of course, we have to really look at the neighbors, the churches in the area, and Watergate homes. But residential, one of the goals of this council has been to help seniors, help them age in place, give them a place to live as they get older. And a lot of them don't want the big homes they're in forever. You want some place to go. So I do believe there could be some use, if it's fairly priced, moderate, a place for our residents to stay here for the long term. So, but we have to add some other community benefit to that, and I'm not sure what that is. It is the center of the city. Could we put a community room there? Would we want, we've been looking for a community center for years. What else can we do? And I think it's some kind of combination like that that'll eventually win out.
Thank you, Mrs. Klessig. This next question the round will be started by Mr. Mann, and Jordan Tickton will ask this question about other development areas, since Lot C and the old Westlake Hospital property weren't enough.
The city has retained the Arroyo Group for reviewing and potentially amending the general plan for the Westlake Village Business Park, bracketed by Via Clenis, Thousand Oaks Boulevard, and Lindero Canyon. What are your thoughts about the process? What are the issues? And what would you like to see explored?
Mr. Mann.
Yeah, well, I'm assuming this question refers to the business park specific plan, which I've become familiar with and I'm pretty excited about. I think that that plan offers a fantastic mix of residential opportunities as well as retail and restaurant and office. I think it's a way to grow our local economy by using land that's already been developed. I hope that we'll actually see that plan implemented. And this is a difficult time financially for development, so all as the council can do is establish the correct zoning and whatnot, and then hope that private industry comes and builds it. And that might be a better location for senior housing, for example. But I'm excited about that plan, and I support it.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. Mrs. Klessig, and hold the microphone just a little lower. There you go.
Out there.
Right there.
Okay. I support the plan very much. This is what I love about our city. It's very proactive. This came up a few years ago. Again, it was another goal from the 2015 committee, looking ahead. What do we want our town to be like? We know that area is going to be redeveloped. It's too valuable. It's not just going to sit there. So we, the city, took the reins, hired the Arroyo Group and their subcontractors, and had them really delve into it. And it's been a fascinating process from day one. Yes, at the moment, it's a bit of pie in the sky, right, Chris? You're right. It's going to be expensive. It's a hard time. But the city is trying to change that by realigning, hopefully, that's not quite the right word, the zoning laws, actually doing the EIR for the area so that when businesses decide it's time, they'll have the tools already in place to help this become a reality. And we did ask the businesses, by the way. There were a lot of workshops ahead of time. That's red.
Thank you, Mrs. Klessig. Mr. Davis.
Two parts to that question. One was the process and what are the issues. I sit on that committee. I put myself on that committee for a reason. I happen to like the process very much. One of the things I advocated for was a very large model that you hopefully will come up to the city and visit so that you can actually sense what we're talking about. That model is something that was expensive, but it also is one of the greatest planning tools we know. You can touch it, you can see it, you can look at the angles, it has topography and all that kind of stuff. The issues up there, the biggest issue we heard of the 100 people, of the 100 landowners that are there, the commercial real estate brokers that would be selling it, is parking. There is not enough parking. What does that mean? That means when it's developed, you're going to have more people coming into the city, and we've got to figure out how we're going to deal with that kind of traffic. By the time that gets developed up there, a lot of cars are going to be electric. It's just going to be a very different place in the future. That's why we're planning.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Okay, now we're going to do the speed round. This is going to be 6 questions. Each one of them has a 30-second answer. And Mrs. Klessig gets to be the first victim? No, candidate.
But that
to do
was
a-
speedy, the
I know,
1
that was
minute.
it.
Now
There
we
you
have to
go.
be even faster.
Now we go
Okay.
faster. Okay, here's the first question. Do you see a need to increase revenue or decrease expenses for the city at this time and in the future?
There is always reason to increase revenue, and that is a lot because we never know what Sacramento is going to do. Things that we take for granted are set, that the city's going to get like the VLF funds, vehicle license fees. Boom, the next thing you know, part of them are being taken away. So it is incumbent upon us to continually look for new streams of revenue. And yes, we want to be cautious, but I think we could actually spend a little more because we're not making any interest. Let's get things done when the price is right.
Mr. Davis,
I'm ready for you, Neil.
go for it.
Okay. When I hear increased revenue, what I hear is increased taxes. When I hear decreased expenses, I hear decreased spending. Okay? That's what I hear. Right now, our city budgets are balanced, have been balanced for years, and we look forward to a continued balanced budget because we don't get so greedy or so fat on government money that we can't handle what we do here by ourselves. So the budgets are balanced. We have a $5.5 million reserve, and if there's a catastrophe tomorrow, we don't have to wait for FEMA. So you get a return on your investment, and a spend is lost to the moment, so I'm into investments.
You're flashing. There's a reason for that. Mr. Mann.
Yeah, as part of the city's budgeting process every year, it includes a financial health report that's tacked on to the end of that budget. That report for this year raises some red flags, and one of those red flags is that revenues have been decreasing and expenditures have been increasing even through this recession. So I think that's something to be concerned about. We, at the end of this fiscal year, we'll have a reserve in our general fund of about $5.1 million. Our expenditures are about $7.9 million a year. So it's something we need to be concerned about.
Okay, you made it through your first speed round question. This time, Mr. Davis is starting up. The question is, what do you think is the role of cities in supporting other measures at the state or the local level? For example, Measure K that is currently in front of voters coming in November that supports LVOSD, the parcel tax for those that don't know the name, or the state's recent Amazon tax where they talked about sales tax for existing businesses.
A council member is a nonpartisan elected official who's more like a judge. I don't think that our political body in the city should be taking any position on anything. We're not. So that's that. The only time I would take a position as a council is if it affects the city as a whole, whether that's in a financial way or in some sort of which would require increased spending that we don't have or had planned for, or something like that. So I think neutral.
Thank you. Mr. Mann.
Yeah, historically, the council's been very careful to stay away from that kind of activism, and I agree the only exception should be instances where the city's directly impacted. For example, let's say the state wanted to change the funding formula for cities and take our sales tax revenue and redirect that to Sacramento. That's something we would want to speak very strongly about. But with those few exceptions, I think it doesn't serve the residents of Westlake for the council to be activist that way.
Mrs. Klessig.
I really can't add much more. That's the way we've been. We try to be neutral unless it directly affects us. Now, what is direct? Sometimes that leads to concern. Measure K, it's our students, it's our schools, it keeps the values up on our homes. It's a very important issue. But I think each of you here has to answer that for yourself. Can you afford that extra money? And if you can, please vote for it. And as a senior, just don't opt out. Plan ahead for the betterment of our community.
Okay, the next speed question goes to Mr. Mann. He starts the round. How much have you already raised for your campaign, and what is the primary source of those funds?
So far, I've raised a little over $19,000 for my campaign. The majority of that money has come from myself and my own company. The remainder has come from personal friends. I have not taken any money from businesses or groups or interests that have any kind of financial interest in the city of Westlake Village.
Mrs. Klessig.
I've raised a little more since the last report, so slightly over $5,000. $2,000 of that is loans for myself. All the rest of it is from residents in this city and neighboring cities, and no businesses, no special interest groups.
Mr. Davis.
No PAC money from any political party or politician. I've loaned myself $2,000, and I have 34 individual donors that have donated $3,200 to date. So it's $5,200, and it comes from mostly from residents within the city of Westlake Village.
Okay. Next speed question is started off with Mrs. Klessig. Do you see being able to extend Westlake Village public library hours, stay within the current hours, or feel that there's a need to decrease due to funds?
If there's a need, I think we could possibly extend those hours. We currently, are offering Sunday hours. I know the school district is looking at cutting librarians even more, so I think those talks are in process. What will we have to do? But I want to make sure the school district realizes that, our library is to check in and out. It doesn't teach you how to use a library, which is why it's important also to keep it in your schools.
Mr. Davis.
The Westlake Village Library is open on Sundays. None of the neighboring libraries are open on Sundays. I think it's probably just about right, but I would take any advice that our librarian has to tell us about the kind of people that she thinks there's a real demand that's out there that it's not being met. Be happy to, I think we could find the funds to fix that. So with respect to an alignment between the LVSD schools and our open on Sunday, I would like to get the Chief Technology Officer.
So well trained. Mr. Mann.
Yes, well, I would certainly not be in favor of decreasing hours. I would be in favor of keeping them the same right now. If we had the extra funds, I think the other things that would be higher on the priority list than extending the hours from where they are now, things like providing additional assistance to our school district.
Okay, the next question is started off by Mr. Davis. Recently, the neglected, some would say abandoned, house in First Neighborhood has become an issue. What do you see as the role for the city?
I was the HOA president for the trails for 6 years. I was on that board for 9. I was on the architecture committee for every bit of those 9 years. I have a real sensibility and concern for HOAs and their operation. I think the city needs to support whatever the HOAs are doing within the limits of the CCNRs that control their body. If that, and we did actually took a recent action where we passed an emergency ordinance about the raising of buildings and things in response to the one that you were mentioning.
Yeah, I think.
Mr. Mann, go ahead.
Thank you. I think the city's responsibility is to have enforceable codes and then to enforce those codes. I do think the city has a responsibility if an HOA is not fulfilling their responsibility to ensure that a property, any property, doesn't become a public nuisance or health hazard by enforcing codes.
Mrs. Klessig.
I agree with what both of you have said. And again, here's another example where the city's been extremely proactive. A problem was brought to our attention. We quickly acted on it. And hopefully that'll lay the path for the future.
The last speed question starts with Mr. Mann. What in your background do you feel helps you most to be a better city council member?
I think 3 things. First would be the experience that I had as a city council member and on the city council. Second would be just personality and I'm the kind of person that gets along with pretty much everybody, and I enjoy building consensus. And third, what I do for work, for my career, I deal with land use issues and have for the past 6 years, and the 4 years before that I was doing it as a member of the city council.
Mrs. Klessig.
I have to say, I hate these kind of questions, patting yourself on the back, but I think experience. I've had a lot of experience in business, charities, schools, all three. I'm a compassionate, caring person, and I think that makes a big difference and something that you need to look for in your council members going forward. And I listen. I listen and I dig. I'm actively trying to get your ideas at all times.
Mr. Davis.
I've been married 30 years to the same woman. We have 3 children, 2 daughters, a son and 2 daughters. So I think I understand the balance between Venus and Mars. I worked in television production for many years and have balanced the needs between a star who made millions of dollars and a craft service guy who was giving her the donuts, who made just a few $100s a week. And I think I can balance interests and make things work in a harmonious way.
I'm sure you'll be glad to know that we're done with the speed round questions. We're going to now go back to the 1-minute format. The first one goes to Mrs. Klessig. It's about technology infrastructure. Because the city of Westlake Village is on the border of the county, and as a result at the edge of service areas for internet, phone, and cable companies, city residents and businesses have relatively poor services. What do you see as the issues surrounding the city's technology infrastructure? And to be clear here, this is infrastructure that residents and business owners would use for internet, cellular, and television. It is not about the technologies that the city staff would use or the city council would use to support its residents.
So to make clear, you're asking me what infrastructure the city should influence in the future.
What would you like to see, or what do you see as the issues surrounding the infrastructure in our city right now?
Okay. Well, actually, this has come up since I started on council. At that time, we were looking at the cities of Cerritos, Philadelphia, and San Diego had all instituted free Wi-Fi for the residents. Those systems turned out to not be very secure. They were costly, and in the end, the people didn't like it. So that's still a problem today. How do you bring in better service in a rapidly changing technological world for somebody that is on the edge? I think our house is one of the furthest from the hubs that I know of. We've tried every service it is, and it's slow. Yes, I would like to see something done. We are currently studying it, and we're actually scheduled for a technology update in a couple weeks. And I think we need to hear more from residents and businesses because, again, on that little survey that we did, adding free Wi-Fi hotspots, and I realize that's not exactly what we're looking for, was ranked last. And the most residents said they didn't want us to spend our money there.
Mr. Davis.
I feel passionately about this topic for several reasons. One is I think the future businesses, the future economics of this valley are going to be related to how much delivery of technology you can get. Businesses will grow if they can have an internet connection and whatever comes beyond Internet 2.0 or whatever it's going to be, and we need to be cognizant of that. We are cognizant of that in the area of the North Business Park because there's no cable there right now. So this is already on the table for us. By the way, you can get free Wi-Fi in Westlake Village if you go to the public library.
Mr. Mann.
Yeah, this is something that's very important to me too. In fact, it's on my campaign literature. There are a number of cities who have done it quite successfully. We're talking about free Wi-Fi. The city of Riverside is one, covers an area that's much larger than the city of Westlake Village. I think we need to make it a priority. It's a benefit to our residents. It's a way to entice good businesses and jobs to our area. I also think that the city should have a technology master plan. We ought to study what can be done in Westlake, what the cost would be, and lay out a plan for how we're going to get there.
Okay, this next question starts with Mr. Davis. It's a different kind of technology question that was submitted. Now, as a follow-up to the prior question, what do you see as ways to improve the city staff and the council's use of technology to interface and serve the residents and business? So this is not about the infrastructure, it's what is the city doing?
In 2 weeks, the city will have its first technology summit. The city council members are not heavy technology users, and therefore they don't really get it yet. And so it's taken a while. I've tried to get this going for some time. I am on that committee. We created a communications ad hoc committee to do exactly what Chris has just mentioned, which is to create a technology plan, which would include everything, including how do you use your website in the city, how it delivers services to its residents, how the residents are having a dynamic relationship with the city. So we are addressing it. I do feel it's late in my first 4 years. If I get another 4, I think we'll probably have some education that will happen with the council, and so I hope that they'll be paying close attention when we have the study session, and the public is invited.
Mr. Mann.
Yeah, I am a pretty heavy technology user, and I think that the city can be doing a lot more to utilize technologies, for example, social media. Facebook, Twitter, those sorts of things. Some cities allow the residents to sign up optionally for Twitter accounts, and important community events or emergency notifications are sent out via Twitter. Those sorts of things are very useful, and I hope that Westlake starts to implement that.
Thank you, Neil. I want to make a little rebuttal to what I said earlier, because I don't want to lead you astray that I don't think technology is important, because it's extremely important. As both of my fellow candidates said, this is the wave of the future. And our council, as part of it, has to learn a little more about what is going on there and use it. We do have the technology summit coming up, thanks to Mr. Davis, and I think there's a lot of potential in our city. And we did institute a emergency call pattern. It's not Twitter, but that was a big step for us, where we can now notify everybody via email or phone when there are emergency situations.
Thank you, Mrs. Klessig. This next round starts with Mr. Mann, and it's about crime. Westlake Village is a very safe place to live, but in recent years, in particular with the down economy, we're seeing neighbors talking increasingly about suspicious activity in their neighborhoods and voicing concern about crime. Whether validated or not by the facts, a number of residents don't feel as safe now as they did even 5 years ago. What do you see as ways that will have a tangible impact, both real and perceived, on crime in Westlake Village?
Sure. Well, I think public safety is local government's number one priority. When I was on the council, myself and the other council members voted to increase our contract with the Sheriff's Department. We added a patrol car and motorcycle units. We also instituted the volunteers and policing program in our city, which I think was very effective. The increase in crime I attribute to the economy. I think desperate times, people get desperate, and we always seem to see a spike in crime in times of recession. I think the number one thing we can do is work to grow our local economy, bring new jobs in, and hopefully reduce the pressure on people to commit crimes.
Mrs. Klessig.
Excellent point, increasing the local economy, because that is what it is at the moment, of course. And why you have more crime? Crimes of opportunity. No matter how many times we say at council meetings, lock your doors, don't leave your iPads on the front seat or your briefcases, that is the majority of the crime problems here in the city, is unlocked cars with the iPhone being stolen. It's a very popular item at the moment. So I think we need to do, besides bringing in jobs, of course, is a little more education outreach and remind people again and again to lock the doors, or at least put the stuff in the trunk, and be vigilant. This isn't a Maryland or a New York City where you have to tail every movement, but you should be aware of what's going on around you.
Mr. Davis.
Most of the spike in crime has been the opportunity crimes that Mrs. Klessig spoke about, and it's really car break-ins, car burglaries. We had, I think, 17 that were attributed to one particular group, or 3 guys that were actually out of prison who heard about Westlake Village being affluent, close to the freeway, and cars that had stuff in it. So I think while there is a spike, it is, maybe it's economic related, but it's really just an opportunity for somebody who thinks that that's an okay thing to do when they pass through. That's it. I don't know that I would advocate a higher police presence because I don't think that's probably warranted yet, and we can monitor that. But 2 years ago or 4 years ago, there was a rash of checks being stolen out of mailboxes, and that we don't hear about anymore. So They find the perpetrators, they take them off the street, and then the crime goes down. So,
Okay, our next question, the round is going to start with Mrs. Klessig. And it's about neighboring cities, and Johnny is going to ask that question.
What do you see as ways to work with neighboring cities and the school district? What common goals do we have with our neighboring cities? Do you believe that there should be cooperative agreements? There should be cooperative agreements like the 4 cities agreements in the past?
We are working together with our neighboring cities, I think, more closely than we ever have. Mr. Rutherford in our audience here has been on the COG, our regional committee, for years. In addition to that, now we have all kinds of subcommittees and other committees that look at our common concerns. And this is truly the wave of the future. We can't keep doing everything ourselves. As I mentioned earlier, even in paving our streets, when we do it together, you know, there's a price break because you're covering more territory. You get more state grants, et cetera. So there are a lot of things that we are looking at. And I think I may have missed part 2 of the question.
Do you believe that there should be cooperative agreements like the 4 cities agreements in the past?
I think they each have to be looked on an issue-by-issue basis. But yeah, agreements generally help. But again, we are separate cities for a reason. We could have been a Westlake Agora combination, or, you know, a Thousand Oaks and Simi, something like that. So it is a issue by issue.
Mr. Davis.
the 4 cities agreement that you're alluding to was an agreement with the LVUSD, which encompasses all 4 cities: Hidden Hills, Westlake Village, Calabasas, and Agora Hills. I was on the Las Virgenes Educational Foundation at the time and attended all the meetings about how that went down. That particular program has ended, but the fruits of that were to get all the cities who are sharing this resource in the LVUSD focused on the technology that we could all share. Currently, the LVUSD has a CTO that is so good, he probably could be outsourced to all 4 cities, and we could have some sort of combined information from that particular person. If he could work as a consultant to all 4 cities, I think we'd be miles ahead.
Mr. Mann.
Yeah, I think the city's always done a good job in looking for ways to partner with other communities and entities. The city partners with the City of Agora Hills, with the Conejo Recreation and Parks District, with other entities like the YMCA. And especially for a small community like Westlake, that just makes a lot of sense because we can pool our resources and get more for our money. And I think it makes sense to do that wherever practical.
Okay. Next round is going to start with Mr. Davis. And Jordan's going to ask it about the environment.
Do you believe that the city should do more to promote environmental practices? What areas would you like to pursue to help residents and local business to increase this? And for developers, what could the city do to help builders use LEED certification?
Let me take the last part of the question first. LEED certification has to do with building practices and the style of buildings and how that works. The new Hilton company that's going to be coming in here with their philanthropic arm over to Agora Hills is going to have a LEED certified building. I think it's a platinum LEEDs, which has to do with how buildings work, how they operate, how they're built. I think building codes can be created that promote that kind of a thing. With regards to what the city can do, I think we give lip service to recycling. I don't think we are really focused on that. I go to city meetings, and even in our own backyard, we have TGIF and that kind of thing, and I'm looking at the real waste of bottles that get thrown out that could be recycled that just aren't. So I think we need to do a better job at bringing people's consciousness about the kind of trash that we're generating and how that can actually be generated in a green way.
Mr. Mann.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'd like to add also that in my business, I do a lot of work with solar companies, and those solar technologies are improving and becoming less expensive. And so I think in the coming years there might be some opportunities with renewable energy as well.
Mrs. Klessig.
Agree with both of you. However, I do think the city is doing quite a bit with the recycling. You know, we've added curbside pickup of hazardous and electronic waste. At City Hall, we've stopped using the water bottles. We get cups in our meetings, and at TGIF, there are recycling bins out there, but people just don't use them. So that's probably an education thing. I think we need to be a stronger leader in talking about what we're doing. Things like our new irrigation system in the city that's satellite and weather controlled, how we plant with lower water use plantings, etc. And we're actually looking at putting solar on top of City Hall or solar in the parking lot to start generating energy a little after the fact for City Hall, but we're still looking at it.
Okay. Our volunteer scouts over here have done such an amazing job. We're going to let them do a little bit of an ad hoc. They're going to do a question they've just come up with. So you guys don't know the topic. We're going to give you a moment to think about it, of a quick moment. But Mr. Johnson's going to ask you a question about curfew.
This question is very near and dear to the hearts of many people my age, including me. There's currently a curfew in place for minors, making it illegal for people under 18 to be out in the city at night. I believe this law is designed to prevent crime by minors. Do you feel that a law like this can keep, by nature, lawbreakers in line? Do you have any other thoughts on the curfew law?
You can take a second. Or three.
Could you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, sure. You know, that's a good way.
And also, what is the curfew hour now? I thought.
It's either 10 or 11 o'clock. 11 o'clock.
So the question one more time.
There's currently a curfew in line at 11 o'clock for minors, making it illegal for people under 18 to be out in the city at night. I believe this law is designed to prevent crime by minors. Do you feel that a law like this can keep, by nature, lawbreakers in line? Do you have any other thoughts on the curfew law?
Okay, we've danced enough. Now you can answer the question.
I have a feeling I might differ from others on this. I think, in general, I'm against such restrictions imposed by government. I think it's more of a parenting issue. If there are young people in our community who are causing problems, we need to deal with that, and then law enforcement will deal with that. But in general, I think it's more of a parenting issue than a city issue.
Mrs. Klessig.
And I don't think it was just for crime. I think part of the reason the curfew is there is for protection of our minors. You know, if minors are out on their own later at night, the feeling was that there are predators out there. So this is one way of getting you home and protecting you. Whether that's right, if that's a city responsibility along with the crime, I think it could be open to some interpretation. This is an affluent, good area, but I will add to that when I was at White Oak School, they said they recently found a bunch of sleeping bags and housekeeping goods on the top of White Oak Elementary. Now, you got to tell me those kids are breaking curfew. And so does the law help? Maybe not. Maybe we need to step up enforcement and make it a little later, though.
That was Ned.
I'm not homeless yet.
Homelessly. Mr. Davis.
This is a topic that has come up in my house. I have a 17-year-old daughter who I admonish every time she goes out, are you going through Agoura Hills? Because in Agoura Hills, I think you get pulled over while driving while teenage. That's just my personal feeling. We don't have that problem in Westlake Village. Do I think curfew is necessary? Yes, I do. As a parent, I believe it's true. My father used to say there's nothing good that happens after midnight. And 11 o'clock for a minor is just about the right time for them to be in. However, I would say that I think that you can adjust a curfew to be age specific, so that if you have a license and the state of California believes that you are responsible enough to drive a car, that you could probably be out, say, past 11. But I think you need to have specific reasons to be out. And by the way, a curfew law is the same as a truancy law. I found that out too.
Our next question is started by Mrs. Klessig. It's about campaign funds. Do you, and each candidate should answer this for their personal beliefs as well as what they've done with their campaign, believe that there should be a limit on the amount of money that can be collected and spent by a candidate in a small local city election like Westlake Village. Who has contributed to your campaign, and how would you, and partly you've asked that already before in another way, or answered that in a way already. How would you see this restricting your ability to impartially consider an issue before the city? And along those lines, are there any other types of business interests that would cause you to recuse yourself? So there's basically two parts of the question. One is, do you think that there should be limits on the amount of money that can be raised for a small town election like the city of Westlake Village? And is there anything in your fundraising or your business dealings that would cause you to need to recuse yourself? Are there certain types of business ventures that you are involved with?
Okay, on number one, on what you raise, the city looked into this twice, and we couldn't come to an agreement. One of the things you'd have to do is be very flexible, because costs change a lot. And actually, some costs in this election cycle have come down. I can print brochures for a way lot less than I could 4 years ago. But now I've got to add on all my technology costs to have, a web page and Facebook and all the other stuff that we're doing. So that's difficult. What I'd like to see more than that is that every candidate files their brochures and ads with the city, so that you have a copy somewhere at City Hall that you can see what's been suggested in your campaign material. And number two, again, I've too fast. Sorry.
Is there anything that would cause you to recuse
Sorry.
yourself?
Thank you, Chris. Recuse myself. I've had to recuse myself a couple of times, and not from the funds I've received, but from the stocks that my husband and I hold. So, that's just part of life. It comes up. You can't possibly know everything in advance.
Mr. Davis.
Limits on fundraising or spending. I do not believe there should be any limit on fundraising or spending. I do believe the type of contributions that can be given should be limited to individuals, that companies or corporations should have a limit on them, because they have a much deeper pocket. So if you're good at fundraising, you should be able to raise as much as you want. People don't have to give you money, so they have a choice. In terms of businesses, there are no businesses in the city of Westlake Village that I'm aware of that I have any conflict of interest in, other than that they're in the Westlake Village.
Mr. Mann.
Yeah, I would not currently be dealing with any issues that would be a conflict or would require me to recuse myself. The problem with contribution limits is that the Supreme Court has ruled it unconstitutional to limit the amount of money someone can put into their own campaign of their own personal funds. And so if you limit how much a person can raise, you're putting someone at a disadvantage who may not be independently wealthy and may not be able to compete with someone who can just put a lot of money, of their own personal money, into the race. I think the only fair way to go about it is the system we have now, which is full and open disclosure. You have to report every dime that comes into your campaign, and the public can look at that and decide for themselves if they think a candidate's being controlled by a special interest or something along those lines. So, no, I would be opposed to any limits.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of the questions that we have been submitted in advance of the debate. We are coming to the close of the time that we have allotted, so rather than take any more questions, let's go ahead and move into the closing statements. The closing statements, the next person on the list would be Mr. Davis, so you would start off with the closing statement. And did you want to do it from there, or did you want to do it from the podium?
1 minute?
We're going to do it for 1 minute.
I'll do it from here.
Okay, do it from there.
Winston Churchill said the pessimist looks at the difficulty in every opportunity, and the optimist looks at the opportunity in every difficulty. I'm that latter of the guys. I think I'm very positive on Westlake Village. There's been words and used tonight about concerns about the budget and concerns about these things. You know what? Westlake Village is doing really well. We're not poor. We're open-minded, and we're moving forward in the 21st century in a way that's planned, thoughtful, caring, and in the spirit of how this place was developed. Can you imagine somebody had an idea, says, you know what, if we put a dam over there on that flat piece of property, all that water will back up, we can sell lakefront property. It starts with an imagination. That's how we're going to need to move forward. We just need to be imaginative, and we need to have the open mind to do that.
Mr. Mann.
Over the next few years, the City Council will be asked to make several very important decisions, which will have the potential to impact our quality of life. These decisions could change the look and feel of our community, the traffic patterns on our quiet streets, the amount of noise and light that we're exposed to, our city's finances, its ability to continue providing a high level of service in areas such as police and fire protection, well-maintained roads, landscaping, library and cultural services. The decisions of the next City Council will shape the face of our community for the foreseeable future. And I'd like to have an opportunity to play a part in the shaping of that future, which is why I'm running for City Council and asking for your vote. Thank you for being here tonight and for having me, and I'd be happy to stick around and talk to you afterwards. Thank you.
Mrs. Klessig.
Future planning. That's what we're all after, and I think our city has excelled at that. I'd like to continue that also, and I think the positive attitude that Mr. Davis brought up, that is reflective of our city. We're doing well. We're doing extremely well working together. Council, staff, businesses, and residents. We're getting things done. We have a huge reserve. Our reserve is like 75% of our operating budget. Most cities strive for 30. We're doing well. Let's keep doing well. Let's keep hearing from you, and I'd like to have that opportunity going forward.
So with that, I will make a last couple comments, and we'll take the flag out from here. This concludes tonight's debate. We're hoping to make the debate available on local cable TV as well as on the internet, if possible. We'll announce this all through Westlake Revelations, including how the things are signed up or when the hours are. So make sure that you've signed up for Revelations if you're not currently on the list. There are flyers in the back of the room that talk about each of the different candidates from themselves, as well as the general flyer that has their websites, their email addresses, some general information about them. There's information about how to subscribe to Westlake Revelations and how to find out more information about the League of Women Voters. We do want to thank our candidates again tonight. Thank you very much. And Oak Forest for hosting us, the League of Women Voters for being one of our sponsors, and the Boy Scout troops, and these three gentlemen here who have done a fabulous job. You guys may not realize how tough this is, but these guys did a really good job. The candidates will remain to answer any questions you may have. Remember, don't forget to vote on November 8th. Westlake Village residents are voting for two primary things. One is for City Council, and the other one is for Measure K, the school parcel tax, to generate more revenue for our local schools. With that, I'm going to ask Mr. Tickton to come on up here and call the flag retreat.
Color guard, please come forward to retire the colors. Will the audience please rise? Troop salute. Those not in uniform, please place your right hand over your heart. Color guard, retire the colors. Two, you may be seated. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Tickton.
You are welcome.
Thanks, Neil. It was a great job.
Thank you all for coming.